Yeah. Testing. 1, 2, 3.
Over there.
Mine's off. Test your mic, Pete.
Never mind. Make sure there are speakers we get to place.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing.
Right?
Oh yeah, try to turn that one up.
Yeah, because you're just using this.
Okay, I think the echo has been taken care of. All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Township of Georgian Bay Planning Council meeting of Tuesday, February 4th, 2025, and I'd like to call this meeting to order at 9 o'clock. In the spirit of reconciliation, we wish to acknowledge the enduring relationship between Indigenous peoples and the territories they have traditionally occupied. We recognize and deeply appreciate the historic connection they have to this place. The land, the water, the air, the sky, and all that live in, on, above, under it. We are grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all the generations of Indigenous peoples who have taken care of this place and who continue to care for it. And we want to show our respect. Hundreds of years after the first treaties were signed, they remain relevant today. May they guide our decisions and our actions. We commit to learn, to educate, to honor sacred places, and to take action towards real truth and reconciliation. Megwich. Just want to make one additional comment. As I was driving up this morning and just entered the township, 2 white swans flew over. What a beautiful sight. I have no idea if there's any symbolism in all that, but it was certainly enjoyable, and I consider that a nice welcome to the township of Georgian Bay. And just a reflection of the nature around us. You know, it's so beautiful with all the snow. I mean, some people may grumble about it, but I think it's fantastic. All right, back to business. Council, declarations of pecuniary interest or conflict of interest or anything of that ilk? All right. Did anyone sign up for the open forum this morning that we're aware of? Okay. That means we're going to go into our Municipal Act public meetings with regards to shore road allowances, and I get to do a speech. This morning, there's a public meeting scheduled for 3 shore road closing applications. I'll briefly summarize the procedure to be utilized for the meeting. First, the clerk will advise the council as to when, how, and to whom the notice of the public meeting was circulated for the proposed road closing being considered. Next, staff will advise of the purpose and effect of the bylaws and provide for any other information that is relevant to the applications, and staff will summarize any correspondence on file. From there, the public will have an opportunity to speak and provide comments to the bylaw being considered. Please be respectful of time and be concise with your comments. All commentators are requested to state their name and address. Council will then have the opportunity to provide comments for clarification. I now declare this meeting to be a public meeting pursuant to the Municipal Act SO 2001 C25 as amended to deal with the following proposed shore road closing bylaws. R24-08 for 709 Harrison Trail, R24-09 for 25304, 25290, both on Georgian Bay Shore, and Lot 49, Concession 5, Gibson, and R24-11 for 462 Island 90, 6 Mile Lake. To our clerk.
Notice of the public meeting was digitally published in a virtual newspaper and was sent to the abutting neighbors in the close proximity of the property at least 30 days prior to today's meeting.
Thank you. To our deputy clerk, Ms. Graychuck, over to you for the shore road allowances, please.
Through you, Mayor, I'm just pulling up my screen for the presentation. This presentation of Shore Road Allowance application for David and Nancy MacKenzie of 709 Harris Trail, application number R24-08. The applicants have requested the Shore Road Allowance due to the cottage being built on the Shore Road Allowance. The R plan submitted shows part 1 is 61.82 linear meters at a cost of $242 per linear meter for a total of $14,960.44 plus HST. The location map shows the subject lands as well as an aerial image which is in the 6 Mile Lake community. The final slide provides a plan of survey.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay. Seems fairly straightforward. Does anyone wish to speak to this matter, either applicant or public, before I turn it over to council? No? Okay. Seeing none. Council, any questions or any comments you wish to make on this particular application? Seeing none, I'm about to read the motion. But before I do that, A, I need it in front of me, and B, I find the wording of this motion exceptionally awkward. And I understand I have no one to blame but the lawyers or whoever drew up the legal description that's registered in Bracebridge. So it's not anybody's fault in this room. But I still had to make that editorial. I mean, it's horrible. I've moved by Councillor Hazelton, seconded by Councillor Graziano. Be it resolved that Council passed a closing bylaw 2025-015 to stop up, close, and convey part of the road allowance between concession 7, between the original shore road allowance in front of lot 42, concession 7, plan 35R27647, formerly Freeman, now in the township of Georgian Bay, the district municipality of Muskoka, municipally as 709 Harrison Trail, for the purchase price of $14,960.44 plus HST. And that Council passed a deeming bylaw 2025-016, part of Plan M413, formerly Township of Freeman, now in the Township of Georgian Bay, District Municipality of Muskoka, not to be a registered plan of subdivision for the purposes of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP 13S50 bracket 3. All those in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor Bocek.
Just to reconfirm, it's 2025-011. I believe you said 015. Yes.
Oh, it should be, they should be 2025-015 and 2025-016 are the numbers I should have read.
On the corporate services report, it says 2025-011.
I think that's their application number.
Oh, that's the number of the report. He's reading the bylaw
Okay,
numbers.
thank you.
All right. Council, do you need me to read the motion one more time? Okay, all those in favor? And that is carried. I thought you'd want me to read it with those betweens that don't say what it's actually between. Okay. Let's do it one more time, please, for the next one.
The second presentation for Shore Road Allowance application for Michelle McGibbon-Kletke of 25304 Georgian Bay Shore, 25290 Georgian Bay Shore, and lot 49 concession 5 Gibson, application number R24-09. There are 3 connecting properties as per the GeoHub application, which are not merged. Therefore, I have split them up on this presentation. The applicant has requested the Shore Road Allowance for future development and privacy. The R plan submitted shows 3 parts. Part 1 consists of 31.09 linear meters, and this is the aerial view. Part 2 consists of 66.89 linear meters, and again, the aerial view. And Part 3 consists of 93.97 linear meters, each at a cost of $242 per linear meter, for a total of $7,523.78 for Part 1, $16,178.38 for Part 2, and $22,740.74 for Part 3 plus HST. This is a location map for all 3 parts with an aerial view for all 3 parts again. And finally, the slide which provides a plan of survey.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that survey that makes it quite clear of the different parts that are in question. Are there any members of the public or applicant that want to speak to this that we're aware of? Seeing none, I'm going to go to Councillor Predko.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I just have a quick question for the clerk about the triangular sliver of land. Is that a road allowance between parts 2 and 3? Which parts am I looking at here? And is that just because of GeoHub and the way things get separated? Or is there a small gap, and is that what we donated to the land trust, I guess would be my question.
Sorry, through you to Councillor Predko, I'm not sure where you're talking about, right in
If you go to, you have the, in your in the report, I guess, it's page 5, it's got the different colors of the different parts. And you had it in your slide, your presentation as well.
just pulling up the slide.
There's nothing on the survey that matches that.
No, so it must just be GeoHub, and I'm just curious if there is a slight deviation between the properties or not. But if
Right here?
yeah, so there's a little triangular piece to the right of that, and if you go to look at the other.
I think it's just the GeoHub. These are the 3 pieces, and they're all owned by the same person. There's no road allowance there at all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you for the report, and thank you, Mayor. Just really would like to draw to the attention of the planning department, if there is an application that comes in at some time in the future. I don't have any problem with the road allowance. I just think it's wise to make sure that there's a site inspection, mainly because the most of that shoreline, except where we see docks, is extremely high, and not just high, but straight up and down. In fact, the bottom part of this, sort of the lowest part, is a place called the Bluff in our area, and it's where kids go to jump off this great big high area. So just to caution that where there might be development approved, it would be very wise to be on site to see what makes sense, especially if it pertains to docks or anything else related to that, because otherwise any structures would really have to be set well back in behind the road line. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bocek.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. My question is probably to the planning department. For years and years, we've been told that when this shore road allowance is purchased, that the lines are straight, and they're straight from the back of the property to the front, and they even extend out into the water on that straight line. Here we see 3 lots, no straight lines going down. And to reference this, about a year ago, there was an application for Coreyvale Road, which was turned down for that exact same reason, that the property was separate from the initial property, and they couldn't get straight lines going down. Here it seems they've just taken whatever course they want to take. perhaps you can enlighten me on the difference.
You know, if you look at the survey, the actual survey, and you see the lines are very straight, except for one that's been angled slightly because clearly there's a structure that's crossing the line.
So in this case, we've made a deviation from our policies and practices, and I'm just wondering why that would be. If there's a building that's on another piece of property, it should probably be eliminated, but if you could just tell me why that pictorial, I think the same pictorial that my fellow councillor was talking about, page 5, it certainly doesn't show any straight lines going down to the water. Page 4.
To our clerk.
Through your worship, to Councillor Boschek. So generally, yes, it's a straight line. There is exceptions if due to the curve of the shoreline, or if how that may impact it so it doesn't cross the view of someone else's cottage, or if there's an existing structure. This is why the neighbors are notified, and there was no correspondence received that from the neighbors that dictated that they weren't in support of this application. Does that answer your question? So other times there's been issues with the neighboring property not agreeing, or it kind of taking over someone else's shoreline.
Okay, that's fine. I think perhaps I'll go back and look at that Coreyvale situation, because if this is allowed to pass, then his should have been allowed to pass, and it wasn't. So I'll do a little bit of research on that one. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? I moved by Councillor Predko, seconded by Councillor Cooper. Be it resolved that Council passed the closing bylaw 2025-17 to stop up, close, and convey part of the road allowance, part of the original shore road allowance in front of lots 49 and 50, concession 5 being parts 1, 2, and 3, Plan 35R 2764-2, formerly Gibson, now in the Township of Georgian Bay, the District Municipality of Muskoka, for the following: 23504 Georgian Bay Shore for the purchase price of $7,523.78. 2529 Georgian Bay Shore for the purchase price of $16,187.78, and Lot 49 Concession 5 Gibson for the purchase price of $22,740.74, totaling $46,451.90 plus HST. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you.
This presentation of Shore Road Allowance application for Gregory and Stacy Leis of 462 Island 90 of 6 Mile Lake, application number R24-11. The applicants have requested the Shore Road Allowance for property value. The R plan submitted shows Part 1 is 34.27 linear meters at a cost of $242 per linear meter for a total of $8,294.31 plus HST. The location map shows the subject lands as well as the aerial image, which is in the 6 Mile Lake community. The final slide provides a plan of survey.
All right, thank you very much. Are we aware of anybody who wishes, from the public or applicant, who wishes to speak to this matter? Seeing none, I'm going to turn it over to council. And Councillor Bochek, I see your hand. That's the old hand. Okay, anybody wish to speak to this one? I have moved by Councillor Bochek, seconded by Councillor Graziano. Be it resolved that Council pass the closing bylaw 2025-018 to stop up, close, and convey part of the original shore road allowance in front of Lot 20, Concession 15, being Part 1, Plan 35R 27656, formerly Baxter, now in the Township of Georgian Bay, the District Municipality of Muskoka, known municipally as 462 Island 90 6 Mile Lake, for the purchase price of $8,294.31 plus HST. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. All right. And that takes care of the Municipal Public Act. And now we go to Planning Act Public Meeting, and that has been deferred. So we don't need to do anything on that? I don't have to read the public speech meeting, the speech for the public meeting. Well, right. That means we're now going to go to Planning Application Staff Reports. And the first one is 182 Wild Rice Trail. And I'm afraid I've forgotten which planner is on this one. All right, please go ahead. Yes, Mr. Donaldson.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Following the public meeting on November 5th, 2024, and the subsequent correspondence received from the property owners on 6 Mile Lake, the applicant has revised the development proposal for 182 Wild Rice Trail. The revised proposal reduces the gross floor area and the width of the dwelling, reduces the lot coverage within 60 meters of the regulated watermark, and reduces the projection of the proposed dock and boathouse. To refresh everyone's memory, the subject property is situated with frontage on the 6 Mile Lake with a private road access via Wild Rice Trail. The lands are characterized by dense vegetation throughout, with the majority of the property being in its natural state. The lands have an area of 2.7 acres with a frontage of 61 meters. Currently, there are 2 sheds and 2 docks located on the property that are to be removed. The character of 6 Mile Lake waterfront community is of a residential community composed of distinct neighborhoods focused on the various basins of the lake. The distinct neighborhoods vary in terms of dwelling size and lot size, number of accessory buildings, and shoreline development. The bay of 6 Mile Lake in question contains numerous residential lots developed in a similar manner to that of the subject lands. The proposed development, being a detached dwelling, 1 accessory building, and 1 accessory structure, fits well within the distinct neighborhood basin of the lake. Further to this, key criterion for the development of physical character of waterfront communities is visual impacts of built form, as a majority of the property, being roughly 95% of the total area, is to be preserved in its densely vegetated natural state. The visual impacts of built form as a result of the development will be minimal. The purpose and effect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone the lands from 6 Mile Lake Residential Exception 1 zone to a 6 Mile Lake Residential Exception Holding Zone to permit the future development of a detached dwelling, dock, and boathouse. A site plan agreement is to be registered on title recognizing the recommendations of the Fish Habitat Assessment prior to the removal of the holding zone. The current zoning, being 6 Mile Lake Residential Exception 1 zone, was enacted to maintain a 30-meter setback between the sensitive environmental features along the shoreline and any future residential development. The proposed amendment before you today seeks to maintain this 30-meter setback, citing the future development 33.1 meters from the shoreline. The original proposal was to permit a property having a lot coverage of 12.2% within 60 meters of the regulated watermark, a dwelling with a gross floor area of 521 square meters and a width of 28.5 meters, and a boathouse and dock with a projection of 15 meters. The revised proposal is to permit a property having a lot coverage of 9.94% within 60 meters of the regulated watermark, a dwelling with a gross floor area of 392 square meters and a width of 27.3 meters, and a boathouse and dock having a projection of 14 meters. Section F.5.9.7.4 of the Township of Georgian Bay official plan states that variances to the established maximum size and or width of a dwelling may be considered where the applicant provides evidence satisfactory to the township that the dwelling will maintain and enhance natural form of the area. The visual impact of the dwelling will not be significant and is in accordance with all other applicable policies of this plan, including the 6 Mile Lake goals, basis, principles, and environmental policies. The dwelling will maintain a 20-meter setback to the mid-property wetland, a 15-meter setback to the mid-property watercourse, a 33-meter setback to the shoreline, and interior side yard setbacks that are approximately 3 times greater than the minimums required. The existing densely vegetated areas within these proposed yards are to be retained. Section D.2.2.4.2 of the official plan requires a minimum target of 75% of linear shoreline of a lot to be maintained in its natural state to a targeted depth of 15 meters back from the shoreline where vacant lots are being developed. In this case, the proposed retention of the vegetation will be 30 meters of the shoreline, being twice the target depth of the official plan policy, with a maximum of only 1.8 meter wide permeable path permitted to access the shoreline, allowing for approximately 97% of linear frontage to be retained in natural state. The height of the proposed dwelling remains within the requirements of the 6 Mile Lake residential zone, remaining at a relatively low profile level to be below the retained tree line. A fish habitat assessment prepared by Riverstone Environmental Solutions was updated to review the proposed change in the projection of the boathouse and dock, which was reduced from 15 meters rather to 14 meters. The report recommends that the proposed boathouse and dock remains permissible so long as it is located 4 meters from the 6 Mile Lake shoreline, accessed via a boardwalk no greater than 1.8 meters in width, and supported by posts, which is consistent with the revised site plan. Projection is a measurement of the total extent of shoreline structures from the current watermark. The measurement includes the length of the dock and boathouse, which are both in compliance with specific sizing provisions under the zoning bylaw, as well as the proposed 4-meter-long access ramp to avoid the disturbance of sensitive fish habitat. With respect to the proposed projection for the boathouse and dock, the increase is required solely to avoid the area of dense aquatic vegetation identified as Type 1 fish habitat, as recommended within the Riverstone assessment. Otherwise, as shown on the overhead displayed, the dock and boathouse would meet all other applicable sizing provisions of the zoning bylaw, being a single slip, 1-story design. The dock and boathouse are foreseen to be the only built form visible to lake users amongst a natural form backdrop, screening the dwelling from the shoreline. No navigational impacts are anticipated from this increase, as the distance between the subject lands and the opposite shoreline is approximately 275 meters to the closest point. The rezoning of the lands will result in the placement of a hold on the property. In order to remove the hold, the property owners will be required to enter into a site plan agreement with the township to ensure the recommendations of the fish habitat assessment conducted by Riverstone Environmental and peer-reviewed by Hutchinson Environmental are recognized in the development. The site plan agreement will recognize the following recommendations for the development of the boathouse and dock: locating the dock and boathouse 4 meters from the shoreline in an area without dense aquatic vegetation, accessing the dock via a 4-meter-long boardwalk to a maximum of 1.8 meters in width, completing all in-water work outside of the warm water timing window, leaving all in-water habitat features undisturbed. The site plan agreement will recognize the following recommendations for the development of the dwelling: setting all land-based development and site alteration a minimum of 30 meters from the Type 1 fish habitat, a minimum of 15 meters from the mid-property watercourse, and a minimum of 20 meters from the mid-property wetland, maintaining the existing native vegetation between the development and the shoreline, and between the development and the wetland, implementing a sediment and erosion control plan for the construction phase of the development, installing a culvert within the portion of the driveway that passes through the wetland, and limiting vegetation removal to be completed outside of the primary breeding bird nesting window, and having a nest survey conducted by a qualified biologist within 5 days of the commencement of vegetation removal activities. Overall, with the reductions in gross floor area, dwelling width, and lot coverage, together with a significant shoreline setback and requirement to maintain the vegetated buffers both in the front and at the rear of the dwelling, the proposed development will result in a site design that meets the intent of the Township of Georgian Bay and District of Muskoka official plans. Planning staff have completed a detailed analysis of the application and are recommending that council approve the zoning bylaw amendment application, subject to the requirement of a site plan agreement. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. As this is not a public meeting, I'm going to turn it directly over to council. My understanding is that the applicant and their agent are present if we have any questions for them. But in the meantime, council, anyone wish to add any? Okay, council, we'll start with Councillor Bochuk, followed by Councillor Cooper, please.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, a question for the clerk. Was there any correspondence on this file, either for or against?
I believe there was, we did receive a number of pieces of correspondence over the last couple of days, to the best of my recollection. So that, yeah.
Just for a matter of public record, I want to be sure.
Yeah, no, there was definitely, I think we all received 4 or 5 pieces of correspondence, though a couple of them were just in support of the initial one. But
yes.
No less, yes. All right, was that the extent of your question for now?
It was. Normally the clerk would tell us if we received correspondence or not, and I was just wondering why we didn't have that.
Madam Clerk?
I don't have a prepared list because it's not a statutory public meeting. So if it was a statutory public meeting, I would have a full list of every piece of correspondence received. Because it's not, I wasn't prepared to answer that question. I can find out that information for you. I just don't have it directly in front of me.
Okay, thank you.
Meantime, I'm going to go to Councillor Cooper, please.
Thank you, Mayor. And yes, there was quite a bit of feedback, I would say. The only feedback I saw was not in support. But I have some concerns I wanted to raise about this. I appreciate that the application has been modified, but I would like to just ask a couple of questions of our planner, if you don't mind. So the frontage, sorry, the width of the building is 27.3 meters, which is about 100 feet. What is the width of the property?
The width of the property is 61 meters.
So, okay, so maybe 200 feet. So that's about 50% of the frontage is taken up with this structure, which is, from a planning perspective, pretty far outside our guidelines, is it not?
Through the mayor, particularly we look a lot at width when it would affect the visual impact of the shoreline. In this case, it's, like I said in the report, 33 meters of retained dense vegetation. That width will not be visible from the shoreline. I will say the width is also exaggerated from a screened-in porch area. Not that it changes the overall width, but it does change the four-season living area of the dwelling.
Well, thank you, but as I see it, we need to remember that vegetation can die, can be burned, can be cut down. So we have bylaws in place for reasons, and even if there is at the moment less visual impact, I think it's important to understand that. I would like to also say that there's a crib boathouse being proposed as well. Is that not correct?
Through the mayor, I don't believe it's a crib boathouse. They have to build in accordance with the Ontario Fisheries guidelines in that close proximity to the type 1 fish habitat. They need to use alternate construction methods to place that boathouse.
So it's a floating boathouse?
Through the mayor, as far as my understanding, yes.
Oh, that's not what I understood from the application, but I think it's important if it is a floating boathouse, as I also understand it, are there any sort of allowances here for having sidewalls? Because boat ports is what we're talking about now, is a boat port. Typically wouldn't have sidewalls or back walls, which impacts the visual impact of the shoreline. So that's why boat ports are generally preferred in many parts of our township. I just didn't quite get that from this application, that it was a boat port A and without sidewalls B, because there is that visual impact. So I wanted to raise that. I'm concerned about the fish habitat in the wetlands in the area as well. So there's a number of things that I noted, and I've seen similar commentary from a number of people in the community. So that's my final point is that in order for our planning department and for us to respond to an application like this, there are questions like the ones I've raised. There are questions that have been raised by others. If we pass this today, because we've gone through the perfunctory aspect of having a public meeting previously, from my perspective, we really should be having two public meetings because there's a lot of feedback and there's been some changes from the original to this. So how do we incorporate feedback from the public if we pass it today? So I would have difficulty passing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Graziano.
Thank you, Your Worship. And again, forgive me for coughing or a frog in my throat. I am still very much sick. I echo Councillor Cooper's concerns. There are some concerns with regards to the wetlands that I am concerned about. I also did receive an abundance of phone calls as well as some emails against the proposal. My question, for clarity purposes, as Councillor Cooper raises a valid concern, is this a boat port or is this an actual boathouse? I don't have any renderings, and just a note for staff, in trying to open up the PDF, it's been a bit of a challenge. For some reason, I guess it's such a large file that it's been taking quite a long time for me to try to open it. I've had to go back and forth numerous times to try to reopen it. But with that said, I don't have any renderings showing what the boathouse is going to look like. Is this going to have sidewalls to it, or will it be fully enclosed, or will it be open? Over to staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the mayor, from my understanding, it does have sidewalls. I'm not sure if the planner on file does have any renderings prepared. I am aware that he's in attendance. I don't know if he wants to speak to if there's any elevations prepared. I know that there's elevations and renderings prepared for the dwelling, but I'm not positive on the boathouse.
Okay, we're going to bring the agent over so we can ask questions directly of the agent.
Hi, members.
Gratis, heard the question?
Yes, I heard the question. I don't in fact have a rendering myself for this project, and I'm just conferring here with the designers, and they have told me that no, there is no rendering for it. So there's nothing that we can physically show you. But from my understanding, does have its sidewalls, and it complies in all the ways of the bylaw, other than the required projection because of the recommendation made by Riverstone. So that's the information that I've been provided.
Thank you, if I may, Your Worship, for the additional comment. I had intended to, over the weekend, to scoot through and take a look, but unfortunately, they just marked or staked the lakes this past week, and so I didn't want to risk running the ice on my sled to take a look. Can the planning staff tell me how many boathouses are within that bay currently? Do we know how many boathouses are there right now?
Hello.
Through the mayor, with the use of our overhead GIS, I was able to identify 2 that are in that bay.
And would this be the third, or?
Through the mayor, yes, that's correct.
Okay. Do we know how long or how old those other 2 are by chance? Can we go back in the GIS to see? I mean, were these built in the 80s and the 90s, or are they relatively new boathouses?
Through the mayor, I don't have that information in front of me right now. We do have the ability to see when they were built approximately through MPAC data. We can retrieve that if that's your wish.
I am curious, and the reason being is that I know the bay quite well, and I from my recollection, I don't recall very many boathouses, and so this boathouse would likely, go counter to the natural aesthetic of that bay. So I just wanted to make sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, not seeing other hands at this point, I'm going to ask a question. When I was looking at the plan of the cottage, they show a main floor area of 310 square meters and an upper area of 82 square meters. But that upper area includes 2 what they call attic spaces, which have, according to the rendering, faux windows. So is this just an attempt to come up with a lower number, but creating space that, I mean, were those so-called attic spaces included in the calculation of the interior square or interior area?
Through you, your mayor, I don't believe they're included in the floor area, and I don't believe they're actually accessible from that second floor area. Again, the planner on file may speak to the renderings that he prepared and the floor area that he prepared, but as far as I'm aware, they are not included in the floor area calculation.
I have real difficulty with that, frankly, because there's a hallway that ends that if I were the owner, and I'm not trying to say anything, jump to conclusions are unfair, but if I owned this building, I'd cut 2 doors in because there's perfect ends of halls, and all of a sudden I have 2 additional rooms. I think that, and I don't know if it's a fault in this, asking this to our planner, our planning department. Is this a hole in our planning definitions of square area? I mean, we always say, like, for instance, if you're in the basement, once it's above a certain height, it counts as floor area. In an attic, if you're building an attic that is actually exactly the same dimensions and height as a room would be, except it doesn't have a door, it doesn't have access, does that get excluded? I mean, I'd be disappointed if that were the fact, simply because we say once we extend a roof a certain distance past the walls, that counts in our gross floor area. And I'm asking if these, I mean, I don't even know what a full window is. I mean, it's a fake window. Is that so? It's supposed to look like a window, but you can't see through the glass. Isn't that what they have in most bathrooms? Do bathrooms have full windows? Like, I don't get it. And I apologize for my, I'll call it skepticism. But I, and I'm guessing that those rooms are, I don't have the dimensions here, but maybe they're 15 square meters each. That's my question, or one of my questions.
Through the mayor, if they were to increase that gross floor area by adding the doors, they would be subject to a building permit and a total review of the proposal once again, which would require them to alter their site plan agreement and look at a review of the septic system. So as of right now.
And I understand those are the rules, but how are we to know? And anyway, to me, if you're building a room, you shouldn't get away with calling it an attic space just so you can present a lower number, because you actually built that space that is identical to the rooms at the back, from what I can tell. And I fully recognize your observation that this building should be hidden by the foliage in front, but it's still visually and constructively, is that a word, built bigger than what the square meterage would indicate, and that bothers me. That fact alone is not going to change my mind on how I vote on this. So it's not the yay or nay. It's just an editorial comment that I wanted to make. And now I see more hands, so I'm going to start the second round. And we're going to go Councillor Cooper, followed by Councillor Hazelton, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and for recognizing me again. I'm delighted with what you've raised, because it really goes to another application we had on 6 Mile Lake a number of years ago under the name of ISIS, and it was purported to be a 3,500 square foot. I'm making, I'm trying to do this from memory, but 3,500 square feet. It was really 5,500 or something because of all this storage space. And you've identified something here that's I didn't notice, and I think it's very problematic. So it's nothing to knock out a wall to put a door in. And I think it's a sleight of hand. It's my view, and I think it shouldn't, I wouldn't support it.
Through the mayor, Savis, if you're still online, do you want to speak to the attic space there, and if it's on the same ground level as the second story?
Yes, members of council. I think actually the landowner would like to answer that question, and I believe she's available as well too. So if you could bring her in, she could touch upon that better than I could.
Ms. Thompson, can you please accept the promotion to move us into a panelist?
Hello.
We can hear you.
Hi, how are you?
All right.
So, yeah, so in regards to our upstairs, the attic space is going to remain obviously vacant. I have two little boys, hence the two bedrooms upstairs. I understand what you're saying in regards to obviously it being convenient, but that isn't our plan whatsoever. Our plan is obviously to have our two little guys upstairs, obviously to join us as a family, but there is no plan whatsoever. I understand and get that, but that's not the case.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Hazelton, please.
I have the same concerns that you have expressed, Mayor. We've had another example in 6 Mile Lake where somebody changed a design, put a wall in, and then claimed it was non-livable space. And to the concerns that have been raised elsewhere, I mean, it's in a heartbeat you could make that usable space. We live in a world, we live in a township of complaint-based enforcement, and if nobody complains, then nothing gets enforced. And I think we need to be more proactive. I think we need to have policies in place that understand what is really happening or what could really happen. And it's maybe not this owner, but the property could be flipped in a heartbeat to another property owner. And they would go, oh, bonus, we've got 2 extra rooms. We don't have to do anything about it. And it completely negates the types of controls and constraints that we have in place to govern septic demand and things like that. So I can't see myself supporting anything like this. That it just seems blatantly nefarious, and I think that we need to be, if we don't have policies in place that prevent this officially today, then we need to adjust our policies so that GFA includes everything in the building, even if there's a wall that could have a door in it in a heartbeat, that it's all part of the GFA. So that should be something our planning department puts into the plan for the revised OP, but on this one I can't see it.
Thank you. Councillor Bochek, please.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, to our planning department. I have a problem with this too, and it's based on what we've judged in the past to be gross floor area. On 6 Mile Lake, if your basement or what is beneath your first level exceeds, I believe it's 5'7", 5'11", it becomes part of the gross floor area. So in this case here, and just to advise you what has happened in the past, people have poured 4 feet of concrete in their basement to reduce the height so that it wasn't included in their gross floor area. So when it comes to that, anything above ground that is built in the built form has to be included in the square foot area if we're going to go to extremes on the basements. So there's not really a question here. It's more of a statement that we have to have consistency in our planning department on what we're calling gross floor area. And I don't think this represents that whatsoever. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fredko.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. I don't really have too much more to add on this conversation. I think I would be more comfortable if these attic spaces had a door and we were considering it part of the overall area, because it is so much part of the house. But I don't know if that's an amendment, but at least at that point we'd be looking at something with the total GFA somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 square meters greater than what's currently listed here. But having said that, I do appreciate the modifications that have been made to this plan to bring it more in line with our zoning bylaws are moving this into a place where I think they have done a pretty good job of trying to accommodate their wishes with what's required from the zoning. Excuse me. My only question is the culvert through the wetlands. I know we have site control, so I'm not particularly concerned with that, but is there a significant construction modification to protect the wetland that's going through for the driveway, or is it a fairly minor, since we haven't I don't think we have a site pictures for back there. How extensive is the wetland that this driveway is going to go through?
Through the mayor, currently the driveway already passes through it. I believe it was prior to the current property owners purchasing the property that it was constructed that way. I think it's more of just rectifying what's already been there and placing the culvert under so that the wetland can be continuous on each side of the driveway. I believe in the EIS that there was some speaking to sediment and erosion control even in the driveway scenario as well. If there was going to be more pouring of gravel per se for the driveway, they would be required to have some control measures to ensure that the wider or broader area of the wetland is not affected by the driveway development.
And that would be in place for the construction period to protect the wetland during construction?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Graziano.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. One additional question to the Thompsons. What's the intended use of the property? Will it be predominantly a cottage use, or do the Thompsons intend on living in it year-round?
Hello?
Please go ahead.
We will be living there full-time, hopefully. Our full intention is, I live in Creemore right now, and our full intention is to move up that way, but it's going to be a lot more difficult than what we obviously thought. We love nature, we love the outdoors. My boys are outdoor 24/7 playing hockey, everything else. So yeah, that is our full intent, is to live there full-time.
And thank you for the response. It does factor into my considerations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think I'm hearing two things from council at this point. One is a definite hesitation, but the other is wanting some more information or updated information. So I'm going to ask council if they might consider deferring this application in order to get more information, or if you'd like me to call a vote on it as it currently sits.
Your Worship, would we be exposed to a potential OLT application if we defer, or is there still time?
That would be up to the, if there was an OLT appeal, that would be up to the applicant, but do you know how close we are to our timeline in that regard? That's a question of somebody in the planning department.
Savis, are you aware of how close that timeline is for you guys?
Just to make it clear, you're inferring like in terms of the timelines to make a decision on the application for the zoning bylaw amendment? Like whether or not we're in an OLT appeal range in order to, yeah. I believe it's 120 days or 150 days before we can appeal to the OLT for no decision. And this application was filed in November, I believe, of last year, if I remember correctly. So I'd say we're getting pretty close. Yeah. I don't know if that's, I don't have the exact calculation in front of me because I haven't contemplated that yet, but I would say it's probably getting pretty close to the moment in time where we could probably appeal for no decision if that was the landowner's wishes. Now, we haven't discussed that or anything like that, but that's just to answer your question.
Okay, Councillor Cooper and Councillor Bochek, please.
I think one of the things we're really sort of saying is that in a sense, it's an incomplete application. So if it's an incomplete application, as I understand it, you can't go to the OLT until you complete the application. You may be suggesting when you came here this morning that it was complete, but now we're hearing there's information that from the public and also from your council that needs to be brought forth on a few issues, including, by the way, a boathouse. Is it a boat port or is it a crib boathouse? Does it have walls? Apparently it has walls. That visual impact, there's a whole bunch of questions that are there. So is it not, in fact, at the moment, somewhat incomplete? And that's why we're deferring it.
Through the mayor to council, to be clear, the application was deemed complete. It is a complete application. Deeming complete does not speak to the quality of the information or what questions council or the public might have that might arise from the information that's submitted. But in terms of the documentation submitted, I just want council to understand it is a complete application for the purposes of the timelines set out in the Planning Act and the question of appeal rights that council chose to raise today.
Which is
90-day time frame.
90 days.
In other words, if we were to defer it, we'd be beyond those 90 days. Okay. Councillor Bocek, you had a comment.
Yes, and through you, Mayor, you asked the question, is council ready to make a call on this or defer it? And this councillor says we should go to a vote.
Okay. And given the provincial regulations, I think we're in that situation.
Yeah.
All right. With that, I'm going to read the motion. I have moved by Councillor Cooper, seconded by Councillor Hazelton. Be it resolved, the council enacts bylaw 2025-019, being a zoning bylaw amendment, said 24-13, to further amend zoning bylaw 2014-75 by rezoning the property legally described as concession 14, part lot 15, plan 35M-673, lot 3, part Shore Road Allowance, and register plan 35R-2763, part 1, Township of Georgian Bay, District Municipality Muskoka, from site-specific zone SR6-1 to site-specific zone SR6-65H, and that the owners obtain site plan approval to be registered on title for the development of the lands. All those in favor? I have 2 in favor. I have at least 3 against. Make it 4 against, and therefore that is defeated. Councillor Hazelton?
So I know I'm not all of council providing a request to planning, but it would appear to me that from some of the comments we have, yes, maybe an application that's technically complete, but if the information, for example, about the boathouse, boat port isn't there for us to assess, I would like to see us find a way to deem those things being important enough so that when it comes to council that we have that information available. And to Councillor Bocek's comment, I think we need to revisit the GFA definition, because if as in my case, I have a basement 700 square feet with 0 windows and 12 inches of land between there's only 12 inches of land above, sorry, below the whatever. Anyways, I think you get the idea.
The ceiling's only 12 inches above.
Yes, the ceiling of the basement is 12 inches above the land. It's inhabitable by definition, and yet it counts as GFA. And we have now 2 applications that have come forward where they are clear, totally habitable, insulated environments, all above ground with windows. And we're not calling that GFA. We need to immediately, in your housekeeping bylaws, relook at the definition of GFA to be consistent, as Councillor Bocek has pointed out. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Just through the mayor, just to remind council to review applications in context to the rules that are in effect.
Fair comment, but we still looked at this and we made a decision. Our next application is official plan zoning bylaw amendment application O24-02 and Z24-02 for 144 6 Mile Channel Road. Mr. Kratke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councilors, everyone in attendance here today and online. My name is Jeff Kratke, and I am a registered professional planner employed by the Township of Georgian Bay. Approximately, 2 months ago, council received this application and asked that it return today for a decision. Approximately a month ago, the agent on behalf of the owner requested a discussion of one of the notions that was discussed by council at the last meeting, which is the possibility of converting the former dwelling on this property into a dryland boathouse. Given the resolution of council, it is necessary for me to return just to update you and to let you know that the process under the Planning Act is in question as to what is appropriate for the conversion. And so at this point in time, I'm recommending that you be aware of this discussion and appreciate that for information purposes, I am asking that you simply delay any consideration of the current applications before you, as the agent wants the flexibility to possibly return to them. But that being said, further updates will be provided. Thank you.
Immediate question. Are we going to get in trouble with the 90 days?
So we are well beyond the appeal period for this application. I'm not personally concerned if this matter were discussed before the Ontario Land Tribunal. Council requested the agent to provide an opinion from a coastal engineer. No such opinion was provided, and as a result, they are now asking for a different consideration by staff. So we are working with them. And again, it was very appropriate for this council to request for it that information. I recommended you request that information, and it was given the scrutiny that this council had asked me to give to the details of the high water mark and the flood lines on Gloucester Pool. So no, I don't think there's an issue here.
Through the mayor, I would entirely concur with Planner Kratke. In my experience, where the applicant has either requested a delay, because in this case the change of the proposed use, or is, I'll use the word, complicit in the delay, it would make it very difficult for them to successfully appeal this as a non-decision.
So I have in front of me an odd motion, odd in the sense in the body it says defers, and therefore if we pass it, we're going to say it's carried, but it's a defer, it's in a sense. Yeah. So I mean, I'm going to take on any comments, but we're going to, the motion is to defer in the body. So you're looking for a tick mark under carried or under deferred? Under carried. Okay. Just so that I'm clear. All right. So I'm going to read the motion so we understand what's in front of us, and then I'll turn it over to council. And that is moved by Councillor Graziano, seconded by Councillor Predko. Be it resolved regarding applications number O24-02 and number Z24-02, proposing conversion of a former shoreline dwelling into a sleeping cabin in the minimum required front yard on subject lands municipally known as 144 6 Mile Lake Channel Road, that council for the Township of Georgian Bay accepts the information in this report and defers consideration of the applications until conclusion of discussions now underway between the agent and the township staff regarding the potential to convert the former shoreline dwelling into a dry land boathouse and the appropriate process under the Planning Act. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor, and I just have a couple of modest suggestions and comments. That if there's a request for a deferral by the applicant, that we have it documented.
Yes,
So that should help us. We've got belts and suspenders then. That'd be first point. Second point is just from I know this is really picayune, but I can't help it. High water mark. It's a term that applies to the Great Lakes, not to inland lakes. Thank you.
Any other comments? Then I'm going to ask all those in favor. So that deferral is carried. All right. Mr. Kratke, I believe you are on board for our next item, which is zoning bylaw amendment application Z23-13 for 65 Dale Drive. Over to you, sir.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. With your permission, I will share my screen. So this application has gone to council twice for public meetings, and I believe this is either the second or third time for a non-statutory meeting. It dates back to, I believe, the early part of 2021 when Mr. Weiss began discussing it with the township. Its location is approximately in the far northeast part of the township, just to the south of McTier, and again on the south side of Deo Drive to the south of Myers Lake. Mr. Weiss is proposing an 85 square meter gross floor area maximum, and I've made Mr. Weiss aware of our definitions of gross floor area and that they include covered outdoor areas where the projections exceed, I believe, 1.2 meters, etc. 85 square meter GFA dwelling on his lands in approximately the far northeast corner. And of course, this has gone through an evolution, but the most recent public meeting was with respect to rezoning lands along the north part of his property, either side of Deo Drive, from OS1 to backlot residential with a site-specific exception and a holding provision, with the remainder, the majority of his lands, being rezoned from OS1, open space 1, to natural state conservation with a site-specific exception to allow them to exist without a consent to sever. The second public meeting included, once again, very strong public opposition to the application. The owner continues obviously to support his application, and council asked me to explore some matters and report back to you today with answers. Those matters are the validity of the OS1 zone versus the NSC zone on the subject and adjacent lands. What are the requirements of the OS1 zone? What is a private park land use in the OS1 zone? An overview of OS1 zone ownership, location, precedence, and character. An overview of the backlot residential zone location, precedence, and character. The OS1 zone is a zone that includes the ability for buildings where there is a public park or a private park, and landscaped open space where essentially the entire lot could be utilized for recreational activities. It is not a natural state conservation zone. And the open space 1 zone is in effect on the subject and nearby adjacent lands. The natural state conservation zone, although it is discussed in the open space land use policies, was not put in place by council in 2014 when it approved and passed the current zoning bylaw, which is the basis the official plan uses for the mapping of the land use policies for open space. A private park is defined in section 19 of the zoning bylaw. And It can include a wide range of recreational activities on lands and accessory facilities and parking lots. And what those facilities might be would vary typically by what recreational activities might be taking place on the lands. Council also asked that I look at the location and ownership of the open space 1 zone lands in the township. And unfortunately, I'm a little bit constrained in terms of actual ownership as to how much detail I can get into because of ongoing discussions with MPAC, as you know, regarding 6 Mile Lake and our ability to use MPAC data and how it is to be aggregated versus how it is to be disaggregated and potentially not disclosed. What I can say is that it's common knowledge when you look at this map that the areas in dark green, which are zoned open space 1, in the northern part of the township, the largest 2 areas are clubs that have, for the better part of a century, represented their communities. So long before the township of Georgian Bay, those clubs had a very strong ethic as to how they wanted their community's character to look. And so the 2 largest holdings, which are on Georgian Bay, are in the possession of clubs. There is an area, the subject property is the black dot, and that is the open space 1 zone that is subject to this application. There are some privately owned lands and there are some publicly owned lands in that area that are currently within the open space 1 zone. In the southern part of the municipality, the largest open space 1 zone is Bosley Island, Georgian Bay Islands National Park, and its related properties throughout the area. But there are also a large number of privately held, large lot open space 1 zones. And surprisingly, that includes some of the golf courses that are in our settlement areas, which in one case extend well outside of that settlement area. Even though we have a specific golf course zone, we, for unknown reasons, have chosen to put them in the open space 1 zone. Council also asked for precedence. However, while I'm providing council with answers, I encourage council to consider that planning is a meritocracy. It is based upon the justifications that each applicant provides. It is not based on precedence. So while I've explored this notion of precedence per council's request, I again encourage council to think about the character of the Myers Lake community and its open space 1 zones as opposed to precedence. The vast majority of the open space 1 zones that are on private roads do not permit in any way, shape, or form a dwelling. There is nearby, just to the east of McTier, an open space 112 site-specific exception zone that was approved by the Ontario Municipal Board after a hearing that does allow on a private road for the development of a single-family residential dwelling. It did not move any of those lands into the natural state conservation zone, even though it includes an EPW zone. So there is an environmentally significant wetland, not of provincial significance, but of local significance on those lands. And there was no assignment by the board of a need to further conserve the lands. Directly adjacent and to the north of the subject lands are 2 dwellings that GeoHub shows as located in the open space 1 zone. The dwelling furthest north, which is demarcated on my map as a GeoHub map error, should correctly be shown in the SR1 zone. And I will be making the district aware of the need to update GeoHub so that it is properly shown as zoned SR1. It is not in the open space 1 zone, and it is directly fronting on Myers Lake. The property to the south, but still to the north of the subject property to this application, is a dwelling that was constructed in the 1970s, predates the open space 1 zone and the open space policies in the waterfront designation, but has existed on Deo Drive on the Myers Lake community for a very long time. And although the current ownership includes the SR1 zone lot, separating this OS1 zone lot from Myers Lake, the two lands are separately conveyable, and the definition of backlot residential provides that the backlot is not strictly just about a road separation. It may be a lot separated by another patented lot, it says, and in this case it is. And so it informed my opinion as to what the character of this community is, and that to suggest that there are no backlot residential developments in this community overlooks one that predates the planning of the open space policies and zones in our township. And again, with the backlot residential zones, council asked for a very fulsome exploration, and I'm not going to provide that. What I will say is that, as is shown in this example, most of the backlot residential zones throughout the township, and they are located throughout the township, are on the opposite side of shoreline residential dwellings, but on a public road. There's no question, most are on a public road. However, there are exceptions. One of them is actually found on Wesley Road. But this did not influence my opinion. I find this particular BR zone, which I've confirmed does exist, it is not a GeoHub mapping error, to be an anomaly. There is no dwelling associated with it. I have not investigated as to how it came to be, because again, I'm not swayed by precedents. We did receive one further piece of correspondence from the public other than some inquiries about what's happening. And that was an email from Pam Jordan, and you received that email chain in your council correspondence, and you received the legal opinion attached to my report. In my opinion, the legal opinion did not differ from the legal opinions received already by the township and by council, and I saw no reason to discuss it at length in my report. Returning to the application that was before council at the last meeting, the OS1 zone would be straddling either side of Deo Drive. Part of the recommendations in my report that was before council today, or is before council today, was to reduce that rezoning to simply the lot, well, not lot, that's a bad choice of words, I apologize. The lands on this lot to be associated with the detached dwelling that's being proposed on a back lot. The remainder of the lands, the vast majority of the lands, would be moved to the NSC zone. I didn't depict this in my report, but since my report, Mr. Bice, who is present today, wrote to council to advise you that he supports that reduction. And so I wanted to depict it today so that you could see the difference between that previous slide and the current slide. So that isn't yet before council, but if you were to approve the referral, the next time we come to council, that's what would be before council. The result, of course, again, would be this notion of an 85 square meter GFA dwelling and a building envelope, which would allow two other accessory buildings previously proposed to be located straddling Dale Drive. My preliminary opinion, unfortunately, councillors, has not changed, except for the definition of development in the GBOP. I am of the opinion that this is good development for the township, and it would actually conserve these lands for the first time. So the vast majority of these lands would be conserved. However, it's clear with the interpretation of the definition in our official plan of the meaning of backlot development that an official plan amendment is required to be concurrently considered with application Z 2313 in order for it to take effect properly. That being said, Mr. Bice has gone through a very long process, and I want council's direction as to whether that is an appropriate next step. And that's why I am recommending that application number Z2313 to rezone the OS1 zone to a site-specific BR zone subject to a holding provision and site plan control, and a site-specific NSC zone affecting subject lands municipally known as 65 Deo Drive. The Council for the Township of Georgian Bay refers the application back to staff until the owner, 1, submits an official plan amendment application with an updated planning justification report, proposing a site-specific amendment to subsections in the official plan allowing backlot development on a private road known as Deo Drive, and 2, submits a revised application number Z2313, reducing the proposed site-specific zone on to the what I've displayed here today. And so that is my recommendation to council. But again, I want council to understand that this is not without cost. So there would be the cost of the official plan amendment application, and there would be the cost of an addendum to the planning justification report. And I encourage council to give this consideration in that lens. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Appreciate the report and all the work that you put into it. Councilor Cooper, is that a new hand or an old hand?
New.
Okay, I wasn't sure. So I'm going to start with you with your comments and questions, and then we'll go to Councilor Petco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and lucky you to have me again. A few questions for our planner. One is my understanding then that the term open space, which you've been referencing here, is really a term from our former plan, 9119. And our consultant that came in to work on the new plan, 2014-75, I think, was charged with changing all the properties from open space to natural state. Some became natural state conservation. No, I'm sorry, but this is correct. They were charged with this job to deal with each one of these. And as I understand it, and recall at the time, having worked with the planner, but they unfortunately missed a number of properties that were stuck with this open space designation. I don't know why, but that's what happened. So at the moment, my question is, open space is not a term anymore in 2014-75, is that correct?
So respectfully, no, the open space type 1 zone exists. It is valid. It was passed and approved or enacted by council in November of 2014. Our official plan in the waterfront designation and in the settlement areas for that matter relies upon the zoning at the date of the original adoption of that official plan and concurrent passing of its zoning bylaw to map those lands that are subject to the open space policies in the official plan. And I think the difference is that the official plan includes policies that speak to moving rezoning lands from open space type 1 to natural state conservation. But it provides no mechanism by which that is to take place. And that did not take place.
In some cases.
On the mainland, I'll call it that, as much as I dislike that term, no, to my knowledge, the only natural state conservation lands are held by the Georgian Bay Biosphere. So all the privately and provincially and municipally owned lands that have an open space 1 zone still have an open space 1 zone unless they were rezoned either to a site-specific open space 1 exception as with OS 112, in that case by the Ontario Municipal Board, or to other zones. And I did not complete that kind of research to find out what applications this council has dealt with since the passing of 2014-75 to rezone open space 1 zones. There may be many, there may be few, there may be none. I do not know the answer to that question.
Thank you for the information, but I think if you go to GeoHub and take a look at most of the islands that were zoned open space, they're natural state or natural state C. And by the way, it's just, I don't believe the biosphere holds land. It's the Georgian Bay Land Trust under conservation. So there's a huge number of properties, as I have identified. I just happen to fly around GeoHub quite a bit that have that natural state. And as I recall at the time, so it's very interesting what you found inland. What I recall at the time was that our consultant was charged with converting any open space to natural state. And obviously that didn't happen inland. That's a mistake. So if we're going to correct things in the future, why would we have 2 different terms that mean more or less the same thing? So that's one comment. The other thing is that in terms of, you talked about private park. If you study a legal OMB many time issue, Island 195 on Georgian Bay was also, there was an attempt by the planning department to make it parkland, and that was turned away by the OMB. There were about 5 or 6 findings at the OMB that all said, no, you can't convert this to a private park and so forth. So just wanted to give you some other information. And that, by the way, cost the township about $300,000 to fight that baby. So I think it's important to understand I'm just trying to sort of add some historical perspective in terms of legal battles and issues related to zoning that I wasn't aware that some of them had in fact not been converted from open space to natural state.
Through the mayor, thank you to council. If it may assist, what Councillor Cooper certainly described is correct, except I want to point out that there is still value in having an open space zone and a natural state zone in the zoning bylaw, and that's why they're both there. The zoning bylaw also states that the natural state zone applies only to lands that are either subject to a land trust or a conservation easement. So open space zones exist for other reasons and for other uses. So that's why I think some of those inland lands that were not part of a land trust, etc., have remained in an open space zone.
Could I just get clarification there? Did you just say that the natural state term only applies to land trust properties? No.
So through the mayor, I'll quote from the zoning bylaw in section 17, the footnotes beneath table 17.1. The NSC zone shall only apply to lands owned by or subject to easements held by a conservation land trust.
That's NSC. I'm talking about NS. There's a zoning which is NSI. That's not anything to do with
correct. That's an island
the land trust. It's just a natural state island, and there's tons of them. And that, what happened when the 2014-75 was charged to a consultant, they were supposed to go and change all the open space to natural state or natural state C. So there's the rub. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I want to thank Councillor Cooper for correcting my comment about the Georgian Bay biosphere. Absolutely 100% correct. And I just want council to be aware, no, I did not look at the natural state islands. And I felt that they were dissimilar from a planning perspective to the open space one zoned lands that are subject to open space policies in the waterfront designation that are, for lack of a better term, on the mainland. I did, however, look at the OLT hearing that Councillor Cooper referenced with respect to private park on an island. And in my opinion, that the key element in that instance was that there were environmental issues that would have been negatively impacted by the operation of that private park. The EIS that's been provided in this case clearly shows that there are no extremely unusual environmental issues that were unknown before on these lands that are subject to this application. And there are no wetlands or other zone or provincial policy that protect anything on these lands. There is no environmental reason for these lands to be conserved other than the owner is offering that as his personal desire to conserve the lands, with the exception of a small part on the lands intended for a backlot residential dwelling.
Thank you. Quick. I want to give Councillor Predko a chance.
I know. Thank you for that. And I just want to clarify, I'm not necessarily saying I'm not in favor of what you're suggesting here. I was trying to bring clarity to what transpired. And I do believe, and I'll do some more work on this, but I do believe there are natural state properties that are not just an island. It's NSI, NSC, NS, and if it's NS, typically many of them, I'll look for it, but I'll find you examples. But basically, it's supposed to be there to say, stay in this state because we don't want it developed because it's too small, typically too small, or no site for a septic system or some reason like that. And that's why there are those designations. Thank you.
Councillor Predko.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Two questions, observations, points. The first being, Mr. Bice will, from this recommendation, start again, basically, with an application for the planning amendment. Is that correct? So, as you were mentioning, he's going to have additional cost, and we'll have additional public hearings, and the process will continue. I just want to acknowledge this has gone on for him for quite a long time, and there's been a lot of learning and a lot of confusion in our zoning and the public plan or the planning act. Is there any way that we can accelerate and help him move this process quickly? I know he still has to make an application for the amendment, but once it comes into our control, is the schedule of public meetings still, met once a month, and will be a few months before we get to a point where we're at a decision point on all of this anyway? Is that basically where we are?
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, I just want to acknowledge Mr. Bice has gone through a lot of our learning. And I guess subsequent to that, we have our official plan review, and I'm just wondering what the timing you expect for this to take place in conjunction with this application for an amendment. I'm sure his application will be before the review is complete and anything is implemented. I'm just curious what the timing might be looking like at this point. If you could, Director Whitlib, provide any update on that.
Thank you. Through the mayor to council. So the intent with the official plan review is to bring forward a staff report to council within this. We're getting to the end of Q1, but within Q1, early Q2, in terms of providing direction on the scope in terms of reference for the RFP that would then be issued for the OP review. Further to that, I'm going to get a little bit off topic, but it's a opportunity to advise council that, and this relates to an item that's further on the agenda, but through the work that the staff team has been doing, and most of them are, all of them are sitting here, in terms of the both the zoning bylaw consolidation and the zoning bylaw housekeeping matter. Staff have identified the opportunity to do the lion's share of the related zoning bylaw update and review in-house. There may be elements of that that may require some further expert study or some assistance, but I just wanted to let council know that what staff anticipate is that the combined official plan and zoning bylaw review, the zoning bylaw portion of that, much of that work we anticipate can be done in-house, working with the current zoning bylaw and making the necessary improvements to it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And then just to say thank you to Mr. Kletke for his work on this. It's made, I think it's become much more clear what our zoning intentions were and what the situation is for Mr. Weiss going forward. So thank you.
One question before I make a couple of comments. The natural state zone, would that allow things like roads?
Not roads per se, but it does allow for walkways and paths or trails.
The reason I'm asking is I think that's probably a reason why some of the properties that have open space designations remained at open space, because if there's a road going on, and I don't think this is conflict of interest, I own a lot designated open space and it has a road on it, or a lane, whatever you want to call it, private lane. And so it's not in its natural state or in the areas where that lane goes. So open space is you know what I mean? Like natural state to me says that there's nothing man-made, so to speak.
So again, you'll see in the subject application, the zone has never included the road, the private road right-of-way. Land under one ownership does not need to be under one zone. Zone boundaries can bisect a lot in any way, shape, or form, so long as it is able to be mapped on the land. And so certainly the right-of-way for Deo Drive would not be located in either the proposed backlot residential zone or the proposed natural state conservation zone. It is not currently on that particular set of lands. Dale Drive is not crossing the open space 1 zone. I don't have the history of that, but that was in 2014-75 the way that the bylaw was passed. Dale Drive does trespass, as council noted in the last meeting, outside of the boundary of its intended right-of-way. And that certainly results in the odd-shaped development area that you saw on the air photo with the red for the future backlot residential, if council were to approve it, and the building envelope. But again, that being said, if Dale Drive were to ever move, the way the zoning bylaw is written is that that front yard setback would move with it. So if the trespass road is altered in some way in the future, the building envelope may or may not expand, but it certainly would never leave whatever lands are zoned BR. And it would always have setbacks from the outer edges.
My comments on this whole thing is that Mr. Weiss has been working on this for at least 4 years now. It's gone through a number of, dare I call them, explorations of options, some of which are, I think, make more sense than others and over the course of the years. In my opinion, what is proposed here is the best of all the ones I've seen over the years. It's probably the most straightforward. And I'm not sure I'm using the right word, but probably the most honest, most direct. This will allow for a surprisingly small, compared to some of the applications we've seen, a surprisingly small dwelling on a very small corner of the lands, all the rest of which are going to have a better zoning from a natural preservation perspective, because it's going to go from OS1, which we now understand has more wiggle room than we realized, to a natural state conservation zone that has almost no wiggle room. And so I applaud everyone involved in getting it from, I want to say wild and crazy ideas, but that's an exaggeration. I don't want to be unfair, but from all sorts of different ideas down to what I think was the original intended goal, and I'm glad we're here. I'm not saying I'm not pre-voting on the application that comes in front of us because I haven't seen it. But I'm saying I think I like this because I think it's getting where it should be, and getting something. It'll be getting something in front of council for them to carefully consider. I think it also is addressing some of the concerns we heard from the neighbors and from council in the past. So I plan on voting in favor when we get to the point of calling the vote. I'm going to ask before I do that if any councilors have any other comments. Then I'm going to read the motion. It's moved by Councillor Hazelton, second by Councillor Bocek. Be it resolved regarding application number Z23-13 to rezone from OS1 zone to a site-specific BR zone subject to a holding provision for site plan control and a site-specific NSC zone affecting subject lands municipally known as 65 Deo Drive. The Council for the Township of Georgian Bay refers the application back to staff until the owner, 1, submits an official plan amendment application with an updated planning justification report proposing a site-specific amendment to subsection F.3.3.4.1 of the official plan allowing backlot development on a private road known as Deo Drive, and submits a revised application number Z23-13, reducing the proposed site-specific BR zone subject to holding provisions for site plan control to the part of the subject lands depicted in attachment 10, Z23-13 revised, proposed dwelling in yards, to Development Services Department Report 2024-240. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is carried. And sir, thank you very much for your patience. And dare I say, we look forward to seeing you again sometime. I'm used to the drive now. It's more venturesome in winter. It's more fun in the winter, isn't it? Oh, I love it. Yeah, there you go. Great, thank you very much. And I think we're going to go to housekeeping, comprehensive zoning bylaw staff report here. And I don't know, Ms. Wanfor or Mr. Kratke, who is introducing this. Ms. Wanfor, your mic has gone on.
Through the mayor, I'm just going to set up the screen. We are here today to provide council with an update as to where staff are in the process of the housekeeping project. Planning staff began with creating an informal list of provisions in our zoning bylaw which would benefit from housekeeping. We reviewed the entirety of the zoning bylaw, and had several brainstorming sessions and discussions. The consolidation of the zoning bylaw took longer than anticipated. A consolidation is an update intended so that everyone can read the current zoning bylaw as amended. Typically, a consolidation is done every 2 years to ensure the bylaw is up to date and ultimately prevent misunderstandings between members of the public and staff. Our last consolidation occurred on March 8, 2021. Not only did staff identify and include all amendments passed and in effect up until 2025, but we also decided to include the bylaw number for all site-specific zones, which required an extensive review of the township's records. The bylaw number allows for staff and interested parties to locate the bylaw which created the site-specific zone and associated background information, such as the date the bylaw was passed, staff reports, studies, etc. One of our concerns with the current zoning bylaw is legibility, navigability, and compliance, or lack thereof, with the accessibility for I can't say that word. Ontarians with Disabilities Act. The font size is less than 12 in many of our tables. Headings and subheadings are not properly structured. The table of contents is not clickable. There is inconsistent spacing and paragraph separation, and uppercase text is used throughout. All of these issues will be addressed in the housekeeping bylaw, but in the meantime, staff made the 2025 consolidation an 11 by 17 landscape orientation document with 12-point Verdana font, properly structured headings, and a clickable table of contents. The consolidation was published on the township's website on January 13th.
Thank you, Shania. Mayor, councilors, I'm here to explain, as my colleagues already mentioned, that this consolidation took us a great deal more time than we anticipated. And we think it's provided us with a really strong place now to work on a go-forward basis on the proposed housekeeping amendments. And in fact, we are approximately 3/4 of the way there today. That wasn't true when we gave you this project plan only 2 weeks ago in our report to you. We've made some significant progress in the coming weeks. And while the project plan was revised for the near term, I did not yet make revisions to its final parts in case we run into some other matters that take us longer than we anticipate. But the outcome, even if we now follow our project plan, is that it's likely the fall before it would be in effect and enacted by council. But we certainly, if we can bring it forward sooner, we will. I think we're in good position right now to be bringing you the first draft of the housekeeping amendment, which will be entirely based upon that consolidation at the next meeting. And I'm going to let Shania wrap it up.
Thank you. So as Jeff mentioned, we are going to continue to work on the housekeeping project, and we are scheduled for March. And we're just recommending that council receive this report for information at this time.
Wow. I'm going to say thank you. I can't believe all the work you're doing in cleaning up. Can I use that phrase? I'm going to anyway. Cleaning up the zoning bylaw for all sorts of things that most of us wouldn't normally be aware of, and I'm very impressed. And I think this is a terrific preparation for the official plan and zoning bylaw review that we're walking into, because surely you know that zoning bylaw now far better than you did a year ago, and with this cleanup. So I'm impressed. With that, Councillor Predko, I see your hand, followed by Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Quick question to the Planning Department. I don't believe we received a notification of the public listing of the housekeeping amendments. I'm wondering if someone could share a link for us to council. so we can review it and send it to our constituents that might be interested in it. You had said that it was published on the 14th of January?
Through the mayor, my apologies. Yes, the new consolidation is on the planning and zoning webpage of the township's website, and I'm happy to share that link.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper, since interestingly stopped sharing, all of a sudden you came in front of Councillor Predko, at least on my screen, so I have no idea who put their hand up first. Okay, you're keeping me guessing, and then followed by Councillor Hazelton afterwards. Mike, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a little bit of clarification so I understand what the process is here. Did I hear that by the fall, September or October, that the housekeeping part of this, but also the official plan review will all be completed by just the housekeeping? Okay. And we're doing all the housekeeping and then we're going to start doing the official plan review?
Director Whitley?
Yeah, so just to clarify, so there's certainly the official plan review, and then the official plan is implemented by the tool that is the zoning bylaw. So there's also official plan review is either followed by a comprehensive zoning bylaw review or done concurrently.
Right. I didn't mention the zoning bylaws. That's part of the process.
Yeah, so this is, between now and then, however, we're doing a housekeeping. And that's just, and if you remember at the start of this process, council was presented with a chart that sort of outlined what's within the scope of housekeeping and what's not. So housekeeping is the cleanup. It's fixing those technical details, those parts that don't make sense, that contradict each other, that perhaps need clarification. So this is, we're sort of, doing some patching to the body work and tuning up the engine, but it's not the new car.
Okay, so I'm just trying to still understand. So, but at the moment you're working on that portion of it, correct? The cleaning up, making it more readable, blah, blah, all that. But when do you start working on the OP and the zoning bylaw review exactly?
So I'll be bringing forward, if not likely March, more likely April, a report outlining some terms of reference, getting some direction from council on the scope of the official plan review that would help me prepare the RFP for the official plan review to get it out there. The other piece that I mentioned earlier, however, is that whereas we had initially anticipated doing farming out the zoning bylaw comprehensive review, this exercise that this team has completed has now shown us that that zoning bylaw piece, we will not need to farm out. We can do that in-house.
So only the official plan will be
farmed out.
Out-house versus in-house.
Yeah, there could be, and I just want to qualify that, there could be as part of the zoning bylaw review, there could be specific aspects that require additional study, maybe it's something to do with natural state zones or something where we may need some expertise that we don't have. So I can't say that we would not farm out components of the comprehensive zoning bylaw review if needed, but for the most part, that will be an in-house project.
So if I may, final sort of issue is we have, as you know, a number of community plans, some that probably need more work than others, but nevertheless, they are there and they are very important to those communities. What have you got in your plans to be consulting with those communities directly, given that I know in my community it took 3 or 4 years, literally pro bono time, probably $300,000 to $400,000 worth of effort from planners and planning lawyers. So a lot of work, and I wondered what your thought is in terms of engaging that community, because I know they'll want to be engaged.
Yeah, thank you, and that'll certainly be elaborated in the future when staff seek direction. However, that consultation piece, specifically recognizing the different waterfront communities and inland communities and the work that they have done historically, and the fact that they have their own sections within the official plan, I'll underscore the fact that that consultation undertaken in a thorough and meaningful way will be cornerstones of the official plan review. that level of consultation is also, it takes time, it takes effort, it takes meeting, it takes engagement. It's a long way of saying it, that takes money. So that's going to be a big part of the cost of the official plan review is that very thorough consultation. There may be an opportunity to perhaps take some of the funds we have directed towards the zoning bylaw review and put them towards the official plan component, considering we're going to the zoning bylaw in-house. But I just want to prep council for that to undertake that level of consultation, which I think is absolutely necessary. That will be a big part of the cost component of that process.
So I'm still have a couple of quick questions. So do you have any sort of idea as to what your final goal would be in terms of completion of the review of the official plan and the zoning bylaws? What are we looking at? 2026 mid-year?
In terms of an end date?
Yes.
So I think part of that will depend on the consultation process that we would be retaining a consultant to do that they would design, and the timing of that. And as we know, the timing of that in this community can sometimes be affected by seasonal matters and when are the opportune times of the year to undertake engagement. So I don't know that yet until we see sort of the responses to the RFP and the project plans, not unlike the timeline that Mr. Kratke had, the project plan that Mr. Kratke had on the screen earlier. It's hard to say. Something like an official plan review from start to adoption is not a process measured in months, it's measured in years.
Well, thank you for that, and I hope it's not too many years, because we could use having this done this relatively quickly. And I just wanted to encourage your remarks about making sure that there are people interested in working on it at certain times of the year and maybe not as much at other times of the year because they may be out of the country. I realize that with technology that we have Zoom and all that kind of thing, which makes it much more possible to engage people off season, but I caution on that front. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you. Just a final comment. That engagement is not just to inform the policies. Of course it is, but it's critical to buy-in, right? And that's why that's going to be a big component of it.
Thank you. Councillor Hazelton.
So I'm looking at your consolidated thing. It looks different, but I'll learn how to navigate it. I did jump down to one term in there, floor area, comma, gross. And Councillor Bocek brought up a comment earlier about GFA and what's included. And I would offer that the wording in this to me is crystal clear, because it says the entire area of the main floor, the first floor, the entire area, the second floor, the higher floor. And it doesn't talk about areas that could be walled off and pretended to be not accessible. So if that isn't clear enough, I would offer that that's a term that we should be diving into, because I think Councillor Bocek nailed it where with the comments that he made earlier. So I understand that your housekeeping is to clarify meanings of things. If your interpretation is different from mine and Councillor Bocek's and some of the others on this, then I think we need to revisit and put some extra language in there for clarity. Just as a recommendation, we don't need to talk about it right now, but I'm delighted that you're going through these reviews. I'm anxious to see the housekeeping recommendations. I think if I misunderstood, I thought Councillor Predko was asking for what the housekeeping recommendations were, as opposed to the consolidated report. Okay, so you did find it, but oh, okay. Well, it's our web page and the navigation challenges of. But anyways, thank you. I did find it, but I think that one of the things that I know I find frustrating, and I sense that other councillors find frustrating, is we read the definitions and we say, okay, got it. And then we have planning come to us with applications and we realize that your interpretation is different from ours. And I think what we should be doing, if I could, as we do these housekeeping things, is we need to have more opportunities for dialogue outside of a formal session of council, where we can tell you what we think these words mean, and then you can tell us why you think they mean something different, and then maybe we can come up with some new words that we can both agree mean the same thing that we're trying to get to. Because again, Councillor Bocek nailed it in my mind, and I think we need to leverage the challenge of the words meaning different things to different people and find a way to converge them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bocek, do you wish to nail another item?
Well, I'm going to follow on the same vein as Councillor Cooper here, which is a little bit off topic, but I want to talk from my experience, and perhaps Councillor Cooper could back me up on this. I think there's a fundamental flaw in the official plan or review or rewriting the official plan, and that is that when I came on council in 2014, I was absolutely green. And all of a sudden I was challenged with looking through the Cognition Community Plan, the 6 Mile Lake Community Plan, all of these, everything, as a councillor who's brand new and expected to vote on passing it in very early in my term. So my fear is, as we go through this review and complete this review, and then we move towards rewriting or filling in new things on the official plan, that it wouldn't be ratified and passed during this term of council. And the next term of council is going to have to bring themselves completely up to date, which is impossible, and they make errors and they just go along with it and say, okay, the last term of council agreed to all this, it must be right, because I don't have a clue what I'm doing because I'm brand new. So please confirm with me that it was 2014, 2013, it's supposed to be 10 years, which would have made it 2023 or 2024 to have this done. I don't want to see this go into the next term, because I can almost guarantee you most people sitting here won't be here next term. So maybe you could clarify that we're going to work towards getting this ratified before this sitting council is no longer sitting.
And maybe we should survey which councillors here will be here next term.
That depends on the future.
Yeah. Or who might stand for election, let alone get elected. We don't know. Director Whitliff, I know it's a little off topic, so I'll let you answer, but then we'll try to get back to saying that the housekeeping is good.
Yeah, to be candid, to Councillor Bocek, it's certainly entirely possible that the process could go beyond this term of council. It's possible that adoption could go beyond this term of council, and almost certainly final approval by the upper tier would be beyond this term of council, given the timelines and the level of consultation and the seasonal limitations on some of that and how that should take place. What I'm hearing is a desire to see the bulk of the work, if not all of the work, done with this term of council. So in terms of working with the RFP and trying to design the process, certainly do my best to be cognizant of that, but I just want to be realistic. An official plan review to be completed and adopted within a year and a half is pretty much unheard of.
I think with our current planning department, though, they've shown themselves to be quite capable of pulling a lot off.
Right, and if I could just have a second swing at this, is it because of the turnover in the planning department and the department heads that we didn't start this a couple of years ago so that we would be ready at the 10-year period to adopt it?
We tried.
Did we?
If you recall, because we had these discussions with some of the consultants we had before we stabilized our planning department.
Yeah. So that would be part of the reason that we're probably extending into the next term, is we didn't start early enough.
Yeah, I can't speak directly to that. I'm not familiar with the ins and outs of that part of the process. Certainly In the case of this team and in my own tenure here, I'm about a year and a half into this now. I would have liked to have started it earlier, quite frankly. Something that I, for one, did not anticipate is the amount of time and resources that certain OLT matters would have consumed in terms of my attention and continue to, which has certainly eaten into that kickoff. Thank you.
Councillor Hazelton.
I would welcome hearing from our planning department on how you could carve out kind of a two-phased process whereby the big elephant is processed, being the OP, is processed the way you articulated, but that there is a path for some level of what the community feels are urgent OP changes. So we have the elephant and we have the little dribbles, whatever they might be, but the community have been on the edge of their seats for the last several years looking for changes that we never seem to get to. And I think it would behoove us if, in fact, the elephant is going to take that long to find a path that allows us to address various, call it short-term, expeditious changes that are needed to further align the decision processes that are coming from the Committee of Adjustment and the Planning Council with the content of the OP and the zoning bylaws that would enable our professional planners to align their opinions with the decisions that are being made by Committee of Adjustment and Planning Council. So I think there needs to be that path, and I would welcome hearing how you could structure that. Thank you.
Councillor Cooper.
Sorry to keep bouncing in here, and I just wanted to encourage, if nothing else, completion of the work in the township of Georgian Bay as opposed to the district approval. The district approval could be in 2027 because basically, I would guess, if not like any other work that we do, it's mostly boom, a rubber stamp. They do a little bit of suggesting, but for the most part, I think we'll have it covered off, and there's nothing to stop us from giving them some of the work that we're doing along the way so that they can make comment as we go. So I would encourage that we try and have it completed by the end of this term, and if there are any other sort of tools that you need to make sure that happens, I would ask council to try and support that, because I think Councillor Bocek is absolutely right. It's going to be a son of a gun for a new council to be expected to understand all the nuances that have developed over the last 10 years, more than 10 years. Thank you. Sorry to keep jumping in.
Councillor Graziano.
Thank you, Your Worship. And not to conflate two different issues into one, but given the timeline that we have been now brought up to date on, how does this impact the 6 Mile Lake official plan changes? My understanding is that planning was intending on kind of wrapping this up under the same review process. Is this going to hinder that timeline as well? Over to planning. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Graziano, I have been continuing to have discussions with MPAC regarding the study that's necessary that the Planning Act requires we make publicly available. I really thought I had actually cracked the nut last week, but I will be working together with the district to prepare some additional information for MPAC that will likely be sent to them, if not early next week, sometime the following week. And my hope is that on the 6 Mile Lake zoning front, that we may be able to have a study quickly done by the district once we receive MPAC's approval. At this point in time, MPAC is not concerned with any fee for the license that they would give the township, but they are concerned specifically how we're going to aggregate the data, and they're asking for much more detail as to how that's to be done, as opposed to my proposal to them, which is tell us how much we have to aggregate it, and we'll make sure we aggregate it to that level or higher. That being said, I think I want to bring back the discussion to a few things that council has said today about the housekeeping amendment. And I want to make clear to council that you're going to be seeing a very fulsome proposed revision to the zoning bylaw. And we really want you to sharpen your pencils and print it out and scribble and make comments and make suggestions and make clear your thoughts. Because, for example, the gross floor area definition, which has been discussed here a number of times today, staff was not satisfied with it either. And so you will begin to see some proposed changes. However, the changes that we're going to propose to you at the next meeting may not address the comments and concerns that you've raised today. And again, what we would like is for each of you to make us very clearly aware of what those are. And I see no reason why we wouldn't, even if you want to write on your copy and give it to us as a submission. I think we want to receive your comments, questions, guidance, thoughts as we do the housekeeping, because this housekeeping is going to be a housekeeping heavy, not a housekeeping light, because there has been a long pause in the reviews and updates at the Township of Georgian Bay. And we know that no matter how expeditiously we embark upon it now, that we need the current zoning bylaw to get through a period of time. And so we want it to work. And so we very much look forward to your thoughts.
Through the mayor, I just want to add that even if council does have desired changes that don't exactly fit within the scope of housekeeping, that we would then keep that copy, that note, however you want to provide that information to us, in mind and aside for when we do the zoning bylaw review. Just to confirm.
It's interesting how we have spent half an hour in trying to receive a report where you did a consolidation of our zoning bylaw, and we're spent most of that time anticipating reports that we know are coming the next month or two. Of course, that means when they do come forward, we'll have no discussion because we've done it all now. Ha ha. Anyway, we appreciate it. As you can tell, we have a council that's keenly interested in improving our zoning bylaw and official plan documents, and making them more useful, more informative, more reflecting what we as council, and certainly more importantly as residents, are hoping in the new improved documents. And of course, if you could have it done by yesterday, it'd be so much the better. But with that, I'm going to read the motion, which is moved by Councillor Predko, seconded by Councillor Graziano. Be it resolved that the report regarding housekeeping comprehensive zoning bylaw 2024-75 be received for information. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And that is, now it's time to wind up our planning council. So I have moved by Councillor Bocek, seconded by Councillor Hazelton. Be it resolved that Planning Council adopt bylaw 2025-019 to confirm the proceedings of the February 4th, 2025 council meeting. All those in favor? And that is carried. Be it resolved the Planning Council does now adjourn at 11:13 a.m. until March 4th, 2025 at 9 a.m. or at the call of the chair. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. So we have the option, Council, of starting the Committee of the Whole sooner rather than 1 o'clock. And I'm just wondering whether you're interested in going for a coffee break or a lunch break. Okay, so let's start the cow at 11:30. Thank you.